Welcome to Chapter 1, The Environment at Risk. My name is Chris Hirschler, Chair of the Health and Physical Education Department at Monmouth University, and this chapter will provide you with an overview of the course, Environmental Health. It's also a demonstration lesson in that it will provide a guide for you as you create your own lesson. Polar bears are emblematic of the impact that humans are having on the natural world. Polar bears are having to migrate north as rising temperatures hasten Arctic ice melt. The BP, or British Petroleum Deepwater Horizon, was a drilling station that was responsible for one of the world's worst environmental disasters. The image on the right shows 3 manure lagoons. Factory farms, or CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, produce a lot of manure. In this case, they can affect the quality of the air and water. So it can cause groundwater contamination, and if people in the community are drinking from well water, it can make them sick. The air quality is poor, and if there is a weather event such as a hurricane or if there's flooding, this can cause even worse problems as it leaves the containment of that manure lagoon. By the end of this presentation, you'll be able to describe how environmental health problems influence our lives, discuss potential impacts of population growth upon the environment, state a definition of the term environmental health, list at least 5 major events in the history of environmental health, and summarize employment opportunities in the environmental health field, and you'll discuss this online in our weekly discussion. Healthy People 2020, a U.S. government initiative, aims to improve human health by improving environmental health for all. In Table 1.1 from the text, EH2, increase use of alternative modes of transportation for work. For example, today I biked in 2 miles, didn't take the car. EH6, reduce per capita domestic water withdrawals with respect to use and conservation. Do you, for example, take short showers and not water the lawn, especially excessively? EH10, reduce pesticide exposures that result in visits to a healthcare facility. And EH13, reduce indoor allergen levels. For example, keeping windows and doors shut on bad allergy days, vacuuming and/or dusting. Healthy People 2020 is an initiative of the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. In the text, they include an excerpt that indicates that the environment affects the quality of life, years of healthy life lived, and health disparities, and that globally nearly 25% of all deaths and total disease burden can be attributed to environmental factors. So it's not just things that are within our own individual control. This inspired me in part to write a blog about a friend of mine, Bud Burdick. The title is When a Model of Health Develops Cancer. He was an incredibly healthy person, but he passed away from leukemia at age 28, which points to potentially environmental factors and also genetic factors. His grandmother had also passed from leukemia. Protecting the environment means creating a world in which the air is safe to breathe, the water is safe to drink, the land is arable, which means suitable for growing crops, and free from toxins. Wastes are managed effectively, infectious diseases are kept at bay, and natural areas are preserved. From page 45 of the text, the hallmarks of environmental degradation are not difficult to find. Warning signs posted on beaches advise bathers not to enter ocean water that is unsafe because of sewage contamination. In some areas of the United States, drinking water is threatened by toxic chemicals that are leaching from disposal sites. Too many factories continue to belch thick black smoke or emit unseen pollutants. Avoidance of air pollution, which at best insults our aesthetic senses and at worst endangers our health, is often impossible. From page 45 of the text, Dr. Winkelstein discussed the 3 Ps, which are principal determinants of health worldwide: pollution, population, and poverty. Pollution from combustion of fossil fuels, petroleum, and coal, disperses greenhouse gases along with other pollutants into the atmosphere. Believed to be the cause of global warming, this can have adverse effects, including a range of disease-carrying insects, bringing them to new geographic areas. For example, mosquito-borne diseases such as West Nile virus and dengue fever. Population, which is growing exponentially in many parts of the world, especially less developed areas, and may result in worldwide population of up to 10 to 12 billion during the 21st century, which could exceed carrying capacity. According to census.gov, the U.S. has just under 330 million people as of July 4th, 2020. World population is nearly 7.7 billion people. The U.S. makes up approximately 4.3% of world population, yet we use a much higher proportion of resources, as we'll discover. Humans don't simply exist, they are consumers. Think about all the water bottles you have used in your life and how many you will use. How much energy did it take to produce that water bottle? Where will they end up? How many miles will you drive in your lifetime? How much energy and materials does it take to produce a car? How many will you own? Think about all the clothes you have purchased. Sadly, few water bottles get recycled. About 7 out of 10 plastic water bottles get incinerated, dumped into landfills, or left as litter. The average male who drives from age 16 to 75 will drive approximately 880,000 miles. If he averages 30 miles per gallon, that would equate to 30,000 gallons of fuel. The fashion industry accounts for 8% of the world's carbon emissions, compared to aviation's 2%. With the enactment of the Clean Air Act of 1970, which resulted in a major shift in the federal government's role in air pollution control, there has been a tendency to think that air quality improves year after year, but it has fluctuated from administration to administration. The Trump administration has called some of these environmental policies unnecessary and burdensome. And his administration has weakened Obama-era limits on planet warming, carbon dioxide emissions from power plants and from cars and trucks, and rolled back many more rules governing clean air, water, and toxic chemicals. I clicked on the link provided in the text and copied and pasted this high-resolution image from the World Health Organization. The point, no matter where you live, climate change will threaten your health. Drought, floods, and heat waves will increase in frequency and intensity. There will be more vector-borne diseases. Hunger and famine will increase as food production is destabilized by drought. Pollution and pollen seasons will increase, leading to more allergies and asthma, and drinking water will also be impacted. Warmer waters and flooding will increase exposures to diseases in drinking and recreational waters. And in the 20 years between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause 250,000 additional deaths per year due to malaria, malnutrition, diarrhea, and heat stress. This equates to 685 additional deaths each day for 20 years. Pandemics, like the COVID-19 pandemic we're currently experiencing, are likely to become more common as a result of climate change and agricultural practices. From page 49 of the text, the World Health Organization estimated that in 2012, approximately 12.6 million deaths across the globe, 23% of all deaths, were linked to environmental sources. The number of people with asthma in the United States increased to 8% of the population in 2009. Environmental factors such as tobacco smoke and air pollution are asthma triggers. Environmental factors are thought to contribute significantly to various forms of cancer, including cervical cancer, prostate cancer, and breast cancer. Table 1.3 shows examples of hot topics in environmental health, such as air quality, conservation, environmental protection, forests, global warming, global climate change, hazardous wastes, land use, the health of oceans, pollution, recycling, war and terrorism, and water resources and wetlands. From page 52 of the text, every day we share the earth and its resources with 250,000 more people than the day before. Every year there is another 90 million mouths to feed. That is the equivalent of adding a city the size of Philadelphia to the world population every week. This chart shows a disturbing trend. In 1804, we reached 1 billion people for the first time. It took 118 years to reach 2 billion. Then only 37 years to reach 3 billion. 15 years to reach 4 billion. 13 years, 12 years, 14 years to reach 7 billion. And it's expected to only take 15 years to reach 8 billion people in the year 2028. This chart shows a disturbing trend. In 1804, we reached 1 billion people for the first time. It took 118 years to add the next billion people. Then it only took 37 years to add the next billion, and then 15, 13, and 12 years. Population growth is probably the most important issue related to environmental health. Watch this TED Talk by Hans Rosling, and in your discussion this week, share why you think the demographic transition is so important. Refer to several concepts in this 10-minute video. Press Escape now so that you can click on the link to watch the video. What can you do to be the change you want to see in the world? More importantly, what will you do? What actions will you take? Approximately 40 million acres are devoted to lawns in the lower 48 states. These lawns require a lot of water, herbicides, fungicides, mowing, and that mowing contributes to greenhouse gases, and to say nothing of the time it takes to maintain that lawn. So one way to be the change is to turn your yard into an ecological oasis. Create more biodiversity, which will attract insects, bees, and animals. We need a cultural shift away from lawns and policies to support that move. As climate change and droughts worsen, we might get to a point where there's political support to outlaw lawns. Currently, local zoning laws and homeowner association bylaws often restrict your options to only lawns, and that needs to change. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, provides a guide, Greenscaping, the easy way to a greener, healthier yard. They provide suggestions for inviting birds, butterflies, and other wildlife into your yard by creating a more diverse landscape. Minimize potential harm to birds, beneficial insects, by using pesticides only when necessary. I would argue, don't use them at all. Also, provide a bird bath or other small water source. And leave wild buffer areas of native plants along ravines, streams, shorelines, and fence lines. Another way to take action is to protest, like this young supporter of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, who is protesting to prevent further destruction of the tribe's sacred sites. This is related to the very controversial Dakota Access Pipeline. This qualitative study by Hirschler of 32 vegans found that vegan diets were associated with an increase in physical, eudaimonic, and spiritual well-being. Eudaimonic well-being has to do with deep levels of satisfaction versus hedonic pleasure. From page 169, Hirschler writes, being vegan is experienced as a rewarding, joyful, and affirmative practice. It endows one's life with considerable meaning. The vegans in this study indicated that their positive self-concept is fostered by choosing foods that reflect the value they place on the well-being of animals, their own body, and the earth. On page 170, Hirschler concludes, participants mentioned the power of voting with their dollars. Unfortunately, change will take time, and hundreds of billions of animals will live mostly miserable lives and die violent deaths before widespread change occurs. Yet, there is something heroic about saving even one life, and on that measure, vegans are making a difference. On July 6th, a federal judge ruled that the controversial Dakota Access Pipeline must be emptied while the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers produces an environmental review. The judge said that it was clear shutting down the pipeline will cause disruption, but that the seriousness of the Corps' deficiencies outweighs the negative effects of halting the oil flow during the estimated 13 months it will take to complete the environmental impact statement. Members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, whose reservation lies downstream of the pipeline, have been fighting against its construction for years. According to the World Health Organization, environmental health addresses all the physical, chemical, and biological factors external to a person, and all the related factors impacting behaviors. It encompasses the assessment and control of those environmental factors that can potentially affect health. It is targeted towards preventing disease and creating health supportive environments. Visit page 69 of the text to learn more about the environmental history timeline from ancient history to present. Thomas Malthus first addressed the problem of population in his 1798 book, An Essay on the Principle of Population. He believed that food production could not keep pace with population growth. Quote, "The power of population is indefinitely greater than the power in the earth to produce subsistence for man." End quote. The result, a Malthusian catastrophe, starvation, and an existential threat to the fabric of society, since the poor majority will suffer most and rebel. Silent Spring was published in 1962. It documented the adverse environmental effects caused by the indiscriminate use of pesticides. Carson accused the chemical industry of spreading disinformation and public officials of accepting the industry's marketing claims unquestioningly. Rachel Carson, weakened from breast cancer and subsequent treatments, died of a heart attack at age 56. In The Jungle, published in 1906, Upton Sinclair described the deplorable conditions in the meat processing industry in Chicago. Sinclair's expose was instrumental in the passage of the first Food and Drug Act that was instituted in the United States in 1906. The images on the left are of Love Canal in New York, near Niagara Falls. Toxic waste disposal was the focus of much attention during the 1970s. For example, when residents discovered that their homes had been constructed on a former toxic waste site, referred to as the Love Canal, they became alarmed about the possible adverse health effects that might be linked to the waste site. The image on the right of Yosemite National Park. Earlier in the century, President Theodore Roosevelt, inspired by John Muir, began what would become the U.S. National Park System. A map of our national parks. I highly recommend visiting a national park. I've been to Crater Lake in Oregon, Yosemite in California, Grand Canyon in Arizona, and in St. Louis, Missouri, the Gateway Arch. Visit page 78 and 79 in the text to learn more about professions involved in environmental health, such as climatologists, ergonomicists, food inspectors, geologists, health promotion experts, ecologists, economists, entomologists, hydrologists, and marine scientists, and more, such as environmental health officers, environmental health technicians, noise inspectors, occupational health physicians, environmental lawyers, pollution inspectors, social workers, and toxicologists. In your Week 1 discussion, discuss one idea that you are likely to remember or apply to your life, and what action or actions might you take as a result of this presentation. In your Week 1 discussions, be sure to address these 3 questions that come from the learning objectives that you saw at the beginning of the chapter. I recommend that you copy and paste them into a Word document and address them, and then paste them into your discussion. Seek to make this the best PowerPoint you've ever made. Some tips. Review assignment directions carefully. Introduce the video or videos you have selected. Explain why you chose the video and what the viewer should focus on. Ask one or more questions for us to process in our weekly discussion. Use high-resolution images. The images should appear clear, not blurry. Typically, aim for about 1 megabyte in file size for clear, high-resolution images. Do not simply read the text. Add value, add insights. There will be times when it's appropriate to simply read the text, but you also need to go beyond that and add interpretation, commentary, and insights. Add recent credible stories, articles that support the points of the chapter. Go beyond the text for the course. Use at least one peer-reviewed article and make sure you know what a peer-reviewed article is. Your PowerPoint should be visually appealing, and it's important to pronounce words correctly. If you're unfamiliar with a word, you can Google it and listen to the pronunciation. Telltale signs that an article is a peer-reviewed article is that it contains an abstract, introduction, method, results, and discussion sections. In the PowerPoint that you create, clearly indicate on the slide that the article is a peer-reviewed article. You can borrow these images from this PowerPoint. Before proceeding with Chapter 16, I'd like to point out how you go about inserting audio so that you're recording what you would normally say in class. You go to select Insert and then slide over to Audio, select Record Audio. You then press the record button, you speak into the microphone, and then you click OK. And when you're done, you'll see how long that audio segment is. You can then drag your cursor over the sound icon and you'll see how long in seconds that audio clip is. You'll click on the speaker and then that will highlight playback. From playback, you will select automatically versus on click. So again, select automatically. Next, you'll go to transitions. You'll select that tab, and then over to the far right-hand corner, you'll type in the number of seconds that audio clip is. That's it.